You can already smell the performance when the message arrives. It's not a phone call, not even a voice note. Just a bland text from your older brother dropped into the long, silent family group chat like an afterthought. Hey family, meeting at Mom's this Sunday. Important. Everyone needs to be there. No punctuation. No details. Just that dry, vague tone that somehow says more in what it omits. You stare at it for a moment, thumb hovering over the keyboard. It's been months since anyone reached out directly. Not even a birthday wish. Not even a forwarded meme. Now, suddenly, everyone needs to be there. You don't reply. You don't need to, because 3 minutes later, your younger sister follows up with, "Please come." It's serious. Serious. That word again. The family always saves serious for moments when someone's about to manipulate you but wants you to sit still while they do it. You exhale long and slow and close your phone.
You know what this is. You've known since the silence turned tactical.
It's not grief. It's not health. It's not reconciliation. It's a pitch. They've found a reason to need you again, and they're dressing it up in the guise of togetherness. Still, you show up, because curiosity has always been your fatal flaw, and maybe some naive part of you wants to believe they've changed, that they've finally learned how to include you without agenda, that they've stopped thinking of you as a walking ATM with a detached personality. The living room looks exactly the same. That old couch you once slept on after college still sags in the middle. The photos on the wall are all group shots that somehow exclude you by either cropping or absence. Everyone's already seated, even the nephew, the golden one, the one who was never punished, the one they said was just high energy when he broke your laptop at 12 and laughed about it. He's wearing a blazer now. Too small. Trying too hard. You sit. No one offers you tea. There's tension in the air, but not the worried kind. More like the kind that builds right before a performance begins. You almost want to clap and say, "Let the show begin." Your mother opens with small talk. Weather. Work. "We don't see you enough." Your sister chimes in with how disconnected everyone feels lately. Your brother talks about how family is the real wealth.
And then they bring out the laptop.
It's not subtle. There's a slideshow. An actual slideshow. Your nephew clicks it open full of graphs, mock-ups, and phrases like disruption and scaling up and agile synergy.
You feel the room turn toward you, not with warmth, but with expectation.
And you think, there it is. You sip from the bottle of water you brought yourself, lean back in your chair, and wait for them to finish pretending this is about unity. You've seen better pitches in airport lounges from teenagers trying to sell Bluetooth fidget cubes. Your nephew clicks through slide after slide with the confidence of someone who's never had to hear the word no. His hair is slicked back, his shirt untucked for the startup vibe, and he keeps using phrases like aggressive vertical integration, like he read them off a whiteboard somewhere and thought they'd sound impressive. The app is forgettable. A delivery service that somehow tries to combine pet food, dry cleaning, and meal prep into one subscription model. You're still not sure if it's a lifestyle brand or a logistics mess, and by the time he gets to the projected revenue numbers, you're already counting how many spelling errors are on screen.
But no one else notices. Or maybe they just don't care.
Your sister gasps softly, nodding at a slide with a stock photo of a woman stretching with a smoothie. "It just feels so modern," she says, as if that's enough. Your mom says he's always been gifted, just needed the right chance. And then your brother clears his throat and turns to you. "So, we wanted to bring you into this," he says, like, this is some kind of family trust fund you've been automatically enrolled in. You've got the experience, the insight, and, you know, the liquidity. There it is. That word, liquidity. The polite way to say, "We know you have money, and we'd like some." He continues, "We're asking for a small investment, just to get him through the next quarter. After that, he'll be talking to real VCs." You almost laugh. Almost. Because you know how this story goes. They're not asking for a bridge, they're asking for a lifeline. And they're dressing it in startup speak because they think that's your language now. You glance at your nephew. He's smiling like this is already a done deal. Like your presence is the formality, and your checkbook is just waiting to be summoned. Can I see the back end, you ask, tone flat.
There's a pause. Your nephew fumbles. We're still building it out.
You nod. Okay. Wireframes.
He glances at your sister. We're focused on market traction right now. You smile just slightly. So, nothing exists. He bristles.
Not yet. That's where you come in.
There it is again, you. Not as a partner, not even as a person. As a solution, a resource, a utility. You lean back, cross one leg over the other, and take your time. What's your runway, you ask? He blinks.
Our what?
Your silence does more damage than any insult ever could. For the first time, the room shifts slightly. Uneasy glances. Your mother clears her throat. Your brother looks at his hands.
You decide to end the charade gently. I appreciate the presentation, you say evenly. But I'll pass. You might as well have thrown a glass at the wall.
The temperature in the room drops instantly. The warmth is gone. The smiles fade. And your nephew, who 5 minutes ago was calling you a visionary, and the perfect partner, now mutters something about you being impossible to work with. Your sister whispers, "You didn't even give him a chance." Your mother just sighs.
Of course you'd say no. You always think you're above us.
And just like that, the gloves come off. You can feel it in the air, the shift. Like someone snapped a rubber band and now everyone's waiting to see who it'll sting. They stop pretending. No more friendly smiles. No more polite curiosity. The masks drop, and what's left is the bitterness they've been holding in for years, dressed up in the language of disappointment. Your mother's the first to speak, voice soft but sharp. "You've changed," she says, like it's a diagnosis. "Used to be, you knew how to show up for people." Your brother adds, "It's not even about the money. It's about you shutting yourself off from us." Your sister, never one to miss her cue, tilts her head and says, "You always make it feel like we're asking for too much even when it's just support." Support! That word gets thrown around like confetti at family functions. But what they mean by support is subsidy. What they mean is obedience. You hold your posture perfectly still, not out of pride, but because you learned a long time ago that stillness unsettles people who are used to controlling the pace. No one said you had to say yes, your nephew snaps, but you don't have to be smug about it. Smug. That's what they call it when you don't beg for their approval. You keep your voice low. I'm not being smug. I'm just declining a business proposal that isn't ready.
Your mother sighs again, her signature move when she's not getting her way. You always think you're the smartest in the room.
You look at her, and for the first time in your adult life, you don't flinch. "I don't think I am," you say calmly. "But I do think I'm the only one who came here with a filter and a spreadsheet." That doesn't land well. Your brother leans forward now, arms crossed. This is why no one includes you anymore. You always make everything a performance. You arch one brow. "I was invited here?" "Because we thought maybe this time you'd show up as family, not as a board member."
There it is. They don't want you at the table unless you agree to bring food, serve it, and leave before dessert.
You look around the room, the same faces that once left you off the holiday card, that forgot your promotion, that skipped your birthday because flights were too expensive. These people who remember to call only when the lights are dimming and someone needs a miracle. And now that you've said no, you're the villain in a script they wrote behind your back. Your sister throws down the final gauntlet. "Honestly, if this is the kind of energy you're bringing into this family, maybe it's better we stop asking." You smile slow and measured. That's the first honest thing anyone said today. Silence. Thick, unyielding. But underneath it all, you feel lighter. Something cracking open in your chest, not hurt. Not grief. Relief.
They think they're cutting you off.
They don't realize you've been quietly letting go for years. They don't do it formally, not at first. There's no envelope, no dramatic reading, no signatures required. Just a room full of relatives making eye contact with each other instead of with you. It starts with that almost theatrical sigh your mom gives the one you've known since childhood.
The one that always meant now we'll act like we didn't push you away, you just wandered off. Then your brother leans forward, elbows on his knees like a camp counselor about to deliver bad news to a kid who didn't make the team. So we talked about this before you got here. He begins like that somehow makes it less offensive. Your jaw doesn't clench. You don't blink. You already know what's coming. He continues. We think it's time to reevaluate how we interact as a family because there's a lot of tension, and lately it seems like you're not really in this with us anymore. Your sister jumps in voice all false empathy. It's not about cutting you off, she says already mid-cut. It's just about realigning expectations. You don't want to be involved, fine. But we can't keep making space for someone who's never here.
You nod. Slowly. Deliberately. So you're removing me from the family. Your nephew mumbles, don't make it dramatic. That's rich. You're the dramatic one sitting quietly while the rest of them orchestrate a coup dressed up in matching sweaters and self-righteousness. Your mom finally says it. We love you, but we're done walking on eggshells. We think it's best if we all just go our separate ways. No more obligations. No more group decisions. No more depending on you for things you clearly don't want to give. You tilt your head. What things? There's a pause. It's your brother who answers. Money, help, time, the usual. The usual.
Like your help was just assumed. Like your support was oxygen unnoticed until it's removed.
You stand up, not abruptly, not theatrically, just with the kind of stillness that comes from being underestimated too many times. You smooth your coat, check your phone. No messages, no missed calls. Just a quiet calendar reminder you set earlier in the day. Family meeting, exit strategy. You look at them, all of them, waiting for a reaction. A tear. A protest. A final plea. But you offer none. Instead you smile, soft, genuine, a little sad. Thank you, you say. This clears up a lot. Your mom blinks. You're not upset.
Not at all, you say. Honestly, I was wondering when you'd stop pretending I was still useful to you.
And then it happens. The door creaks open. Your assistant, impeccably dressed and holding your phone, peeks her head in. She scans the room briefly, then says with polite efficiency, Madam CEO, your car's ready. You almost apologize to her for the awkward timing. Almost. But you don't. Because this is perfect. You look back at the room, at the frozen faces, at the silence that now carries weight, not of exclusion, but of realization. They didn't cut you off. They just freed you. You don't rush. You've spent too many years rushing to justify, to clarify, to soften your ambition so it didn't bruise their ego. You used to lower your voice when you talked about your work as if success was a volume you could dial down to make others feel more comfortable. But not anymore. You thank your assistant without breaking eye contact with your brother. You hear your heels tap against the wooden floor as you walk toward the doorway. Each step is measured. Each click echoes like punctuation, like the end of a chapter no one realized you were writing. You hear your nephew whisper, She has an assistant. You smile to yourself. You don't answer. Let them ask questions. Let them Google. Let them squint at their screens when the headlines start rolling out. It's more effective that way. You step outside into the sunlight where your car is already waiting, sleek, understated black like confidence. Your assistant holds the door open, and for a moment you consider looking back. Just to see their faces.
But you don't.
Because looking back implies regret, and what you feel now is something closer to peace. Inside the car, the air smells like jasmine and leather. You exhale slowly like you're releasing years of tight artificial smiles and holiday tension that never softened no matter how many pies you baked or gifts you gave. Your assistant glances at you through the rearview mirror and asks, straight to the office, Madam CEO. You nod. Yes, and cancel the rest of the afternoon. I want quiet. She doesn't ask why. She knows. Your phone buzzes, once then again. Notifications from the family group chat. Your sister saying, can't believe you brought a driver to Mom's. Your cousin, really an assistant? Isn't that a bit much? You mute the thread.
Not because it hurts, but because you don't need to keep hearing people you've already outgrown. You stare out the window. Trees blur past, and for the first time in a long time, you realize this is yours. Not just the car, the title, the company, but the moment, the narrative. You've spent most of your life making yourself small enough to be tolerable. And now you're done shrinking. At a red light, your assistant hands you a tablet. A small update, a journalist is requesting comment. Your company's name is trending. Something about the new platform you're launching, how it's going to disrupt an industry your brother once said was too niche to be profitable. You smile softly. You don't respond to the message right away. You lean back instead. Let the tension in your shoulders settle. You think about the living room you just left, the way they circled you like wolves with press kits, and how calm you stayed. Because real power doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't demand attention. It just walks out the front door and leaves the room echoing with questions. It took years, not to build the company, but to stop asking for applause. At first, it really was just a hobby, the way your brother once sneered. You still remember him saying, "Cute little project you've got going," while tapping on his third cocktail at a barbecue you weren't even really invited to. You were still working full-time, then building your platform at night with tired eyes and a stubborn heart. They didn't ask about it. They didn't care. You'd mention a milestone like landing your first client or signing your first NDA, and they'd nod politely already, halfway into a story about your nephew's sports team or someone's latest kitchen remodel. So eventually you stopped mentioning it. That was the shift. Not when you got funding, not when you hired your first team, but when you stopped needing them to notice. Because while they were trading gossip and pretending everything was fine, you were staying up past midnight reviewing server crashes and legal clauses. You were eating peanut butter straight from the jar, trying to figure out if you could afford to renew your domain and pay rent that month. You were burning not out but through, and quietly, you were growing. They laughed when you turned down that Christmas cruise. "She's probably broke," someone muttered, not realizing you'd just closed your first six-figure contract. Not realizing that while they were floating in borrowed luxury, you were solidifying ownership. Then came the day they noticed. Your mother sent a message, just one line. "Your name was in something today. I think it was a newsletter." It wasn't a newsletter. It was TechCrunch. They still didn't understand what you were doing. They didn't want to. Because understanding would mean rewriting the story they'd told about you for years, that you were too cold, too serious, too distant. The family robot. The outlier. But in truth, you weren't distant. You were focused. While they were networking over wine spritzers, you were building infrastructure. While they were rewatching sitcoms, you were writing policy. You weren't hard to love, you were just no longer available to be drained. And they didn't like that. Because the moment you stopped making yourself available, they had to look at what you actually gave and what they took. You gave more than money. You gave ideas. You gave stability. You gave second chances wrapped in silence. And they took it all, then acted like they were the generous ones. You think about that sometimes on quiet drives to the office. How many times they borrowed without acknowledging, asked without gratitude, needed without pause.
They called your business a hobby.
But they cashed every check like it came from heaven. You remember every check, not because you kept a grudge, but because you kept the receipts. The first one was small, your sister's rent. She was between jobs, or so she said. You wired the money without hesitation. She promised to pay it back. Never did. Then your brother's tuition for his second business course, the one he swore would change everything. You paid the bill before the semester started. He dropped the class after 2 weeks, said the professor didn't vibe with his entrepreneurial spirit. There were smaller ones too, covering a flight for a cousin who forgot their passport, buying a laptop for your nephew, after his old one mysteriously disappeared, loaning cash for a baby shower that somehow needed a rented ballroom and signature cocktails. And every time you gave it with a nod and a quiet smile. Because back then you still believed in family. Back then you still thought generosity came back around. But what came back was silence, entitlement, and, eventually, critique.
At one point, you started to wonder if your kindness had created a new language, one where she'll take care of it. Replaced thank you and she's fine, replaced. How are you doing? You remember sitting at a family dinner, once one of the rare ones you attended, and overhearing your name in the kitchen. Your cousin was telling someone she's got that boss lady thing going now, but I don't know. Feels like she thinks she's better than us. You were in the hallway washing your hands. You never said a word, just dried them and left early.
That was when you stopped offering.
Not out of bitterness, but clarity. You'd thought you were helping them float, but you were just being used as a raft expected to stay still while they stepped over you again and again. And the most galling part, they never saw it. They thought your success insulated you from being hurt. That wealth made you immune to disrespect. That because you could afford to help you should always want to.
But you didn't want to anymore.
Not when you realized none of them ever asked if you needed anything.
Because you did. You needed support. You needed belief. You needed someone, just one person, to say, I see what you're building, and I'm proud of you. Instead, they gave you sarcasm dressed as banter, jokes about the family robot. They didn't notice when you stopped laughing. They didn't ask why you were quieter each year. They just kept holding out their hands.
And now
they're furious you finally closed your fists. You think about all of this as you sit in your office, floor-to-ceiling windows, glowing with afternoon light, your phone screen lighting up with another ignored message from your sister.
It's a request. Of course it is.
They always come disguised as reconnection. And still, you don't hate them. You just don't need them anymore. Because what they forgot was simple: when someone gives and then leaves.
You don't get to be shocked.
You get to be silent. They couldn't say they didn't know. The next morning, it was everywhere. Your company's IPO hit the front page of 3 business outlets and the sidebar of a dozen more. The valuation wasn't speculative anymore, it was verified. The name they used to roll their eyes at now sat in serif font beside words like visionary founder and disruptor. You were no longer the family's ATM. You were the headline. And suddenly, everyone remembered your number. The group chat, once quiet for weeks, lit up like a dashboard on fire. Your sister sent a gif of fireworks and wrote, "So proud of you, sis." We always knew you were going to be huge. You laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was almost too perfect. She had the audacity to say always knew, like she hadn't once said your product sounded confusing and told her friends that tech stuff isn't really her thing. Your cousin chimed in. Next, hope we can celebrate soon. Let us know when you're free. The same cousin who hadn't invited you to her wedding because she wasn't sure you'd be comfortable around normal people. The word celebrate hit different now. Back then, you would have held your breath. Wondered if maybe this meant they were finally proud. Now, you recognized the undertone for what it was.
They weren't proud.
They were positioning. History to them was clay. Soft, editable. And now that your success was undeniable, they were rushing back to rewrite their roles. Suddenly, your silence hadn't been withdrawal, it had been mystery. Your distance hadn't been rejection, it had been focus. And your years of unpaid emotional labor. Oh, well, those were just signs of your resilience. You didn't respond. You were too busy reviewing interview questions for a live segment scheduled that evening. CNBC wanted to talk to you. Forbes had already reached out. The irony wasn't lost on you, how you used to sit in that childhood bedroom doing your cousin's math homework while she bragged about her influencer collabs. And now she was reposting your face on her Instagram story with the caption, "My cousin, the legend." They'd decided you were finally worth showing off. But you knew better. You knew the truth behind every cheer. The confusion, the jealousy, the spin. They weren't proud of your story. They were just embarrassed not to have starring roles in it. Later that night, your assistant brought in a gift box sent by someone unnamed. You opened it to find a dusty bottle of wine and a folded card. It said, "Let's reconnect soon. We were always better together."
No name. Just a heart.
You didn't need one.
Because people who cut you off when they thought you were beneath them will always crawl back when they think you're above them.
But what they forget.
You remember.
Every skipped invite, every muttered insult, every family vote dressed as a casual intervention.
You haven't forgotten.
You've just moved on. And moving on quietly, completely, is the one thing they'll never be able to undo. The call comes 2 days later. Not from your sister, not from your mother, not even from your nephew who's gone conspicuously silent since your IPO made headlines. No, the voice on the other end is smooth practiced an associate at a mid-sized VC firm that once turned down your nephew's startup and then ghosted him without even a rejection email. Now they're calling you. "Hi, Ms. Harlan," the man says, mispronouncing your last name, which you correct only because it amuses you. "We'd love to discuss an opportunity with a fast-scaling, youth-led platform in the delivery service space." You almost ask if he's heard of the phrase burning money, but you don't. Instead, you say, "Oh, who's the founder?" There's a pause, a beat.
He says your nephew's name, of course.
You smile slowly. Interesting. He stumbles forward with the pitch. "Apparently your nephew's struggling. The numbers don't line up. The product still hasn't launched. They believe your strategic insight and market credibility could stabilize the company's future." Strategic insight, market credibility. Translation. We need someone who knows what they're doing, and it turns out that's you.
You let him finish. Then you sit in silence for a moment that stretches just long enough to make him uncomfortable.
Then you ask, "Does he know you're calling me?" A longer pause this time. You already know the answer. "No," the voice admits. "We were hoping to approach you independently before..." Discussions resumed. Before he realizes he's no longer holding the cards. You glance at your calendar. There's a blank space where a family dinner used to be. A date you cleared out of habit before they made it very clear you were no longer invited to their lives. You wondered just for a flicker what it would feel like to say yes. To walk back into that startup and quietly fix everything he broke. To watch the look on his face when he realizes the one person he dismissed is now the only person who can save him. But then you remember the slideshow, the fake smiles, the group vote, the quiet betrayal wrapped in polite voices and staged concern. And more than that, you remember the little girl you once were, sitting at the edge of the couch overhearing jokes that weren't meant to be cruel, but always landed that way. You remember deciding that one day you'd stop asking to be respected. That day has come.
You thank the associate for his interest. You say you'll think about it.
You won't. Not because it wouldn't be satisfying, but because real peace doesn't require the last word. Later that evening, your assistant sees the missed call log. "Want me to block the number?" she asks.
You consider it.
But then you shake your head. No. Let them keep wondering. Because sometimes letting them sit in silence, waiting for your answer, is more powerful than any response you could ever give. You always imagined that walking away would feel dramatic, that it would come with slammed doors, shouted truths, some cinematic last line they'd remember forever. But that's not how it goes. It's quieter than that, like a page turning. You didn't plan for your last interaction with your family to be that meeting. You thought maybe there'd be another awkward dinner, one more phone call pretending everything was fine. But they made their choice, and now, so have you. You don't go back. Not even when the apologies start to trickle in wrapped in careful language. Not even when your mother sends that email, the one that opens with, "I just want to clear the air," and ends with, "But we did what we thought was best." Because now you see what that phrase really means. Best for them.
Not best for you. Not best for the truth.
Just best for keeping the illusion that their behavior was ever justified. You start saying no more often. Not just to them, but to anything that dims you. You decline panels that expect free emotional labor. You pass on partnerships that want your name, but not your vision. You walk away from rooms that ask you to prove yourself before they even say hello. And strangely, you feel lighter. Not vindicated. Not triumphant. Just free. The power you once tried to earn from them, their approval, their acceptance, no longer means anything. Because what they gave was always conditional. Always laced with ego. You don't need that anymore. You've built your life from the ground up, and now it hums without their input. Your company grows, but you stay small in the ways that matter. Humble. Grounded. You have your routines, your rituals, your peace. Sometimes in quiet moments, you do think about that family meeting, about the slideshow, about your nephew's smug grin, and your mother's sigh, and your sister's faux innocence. You think about the way they cut you off like it was a punishment. But really, it was a permission slip. To stop trying, to stop explaining, to stop hoping they'd change. Because some people don't need to be proved wrong. They just need to watch you live right. And maybe they'll watch from afar now. Maybe they'll scroll past your name and feel the weight of what they lost. Or maybe they'll tell stories where they still look like the heroes. Let them. You don't need to control the narrative. You just need to keep writing yours. And so you do, every day, with quiet confidence, with full ownership, with grace so sharp it slices through every room you walk into without making a sound. Because the best kind of power doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives and leaves nothing needing to be said. You didn't expect silence to feel like this warm. You always imagined distance as a void, something cold and echoing. But in the weeks following that meeting with the family group chat now permanently muted, and the guilt no longer curling around your spine, you discover something gentler. Quiet isn't absence. It's space. Space to build things you don't need to defend. Space to answer only to yourself. Space to take up room without being accused of arrogance for simply existing with confidence. You stop checking for their messages. At first, out of discipline. Then, without realizing it, out of disinterest. One day, your sister texts you a vague, thinking of you. Let's talk, and you don't even open it. Not because you're angry, but because you have better things to think about. You think about that beach house you almost bought 5 years ago, the one your mother called wasteful, and your brother laughed off as another phase. You buy it now, in cash. You furnish it with soft things, blankets that feel like forgiveness, a kitchen that smells like lavender windows that beg to be opened. It becomes your place. No visitors, no obligations. Just you, your breath, and the gentle proof that peace doesn't have to be earned. You bring books, old favorites, things you never had time to reread when you were too busy being someone's backup plan. At night, you listen to the waves outside and remember the version of you that once sat in that family meeting, quietly swallowing pride like pills. And you whisper to her, "We made it." And the thing is, she believes you. You don't even notice how often your name gets said now. In meetings, it's mentioned with respect. In press releases, it's highlighted with bold lettering. On podcasts, people refer to you as a case study in how to scale with integrity. But none of that moves you like it used to. What moves you now is different. It's the barista who remembers your order, the assistant who doesn't ask twice, the way your dog sleeps with his back pressed against your foot, quiet loyalty that never had to be bought. You attend a conference out of town. First time in a while. You're asked to be the closing speaker, and you almost decline not out of nerves but out of exhaustion. But something in you says, go anyway. The venue is filled with people who remind you of yourself 5 years ago, tired, brilliant, doubting their light. You speak softly, simply. You tell them about failure, about not being believed, about how people will only cheer for you when it's safe for them, and how none of that matters if you know what you're building. Afterward, a young woman finds you backstage. Early 20s, shaky hands. She tells you she almost quit her startup last week, that your words felt like a thread she didn't know she needed to hold on to. You thank her, you mean it, and walking back to your hotel, you realize something: your story isn't about revenge anymore. It never really was. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, your brilliance, not to punish those who doubted you, but to protect what they failed to recognize. You no longer have to prove they were wrong. You just have to keep being right on your own terms. You wake up one morning without an alarm. No buzzing. No meeting reminders. Just sunlight curling over the edge of your curtain and the quiet click of the thermostat adjusting. It's been months since that family meeting, longer maybe, and you're startled to realize you haven't thought about it in days. That used to be impossible. Used to be your mind circled that room like a stuck loop, the slideshow, the vote, the voice that called you difficult while asking for money. You'd play it all back during showers, during commutes, during moments meant for peace, but not anymore. Now your mind is your own again. You stretch slow and deliberate, the kind of stretch that doesn't apologize for taking up space. You make tea nothing fancy, just the kind that smells like quiet mornings. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you don't think about them at all. Until your phone buzzes. It's a number you recognize but haven't saved. Your brother. You stare at the screen for a moment, not out of emotion but mild curiosity. There's no message, just a missed call, followed an hour later by another. Then, a voicemail.
You don't listen.
Not because you're avoiding pain, but because you already know the script. The renewed tone of warmth. The way he'll say we were all just stressed, as if stress is a valid excuse for disloyalty. The soft attempt to rewrite history, we were trying to help you see the bigger picture. The indirect ask, maybe you'd consider revisiting the family trust.
You don't press play.
You go for a walk instead. Outside, the breeze is gentle. Children are playing somewhere just out of view. You pause by a bakery and buy a croissant still warm. You take your time. This is what power feels like now, not being unreachable but being unbothered.
You no longer crave closure.
Because you already closed the door. Now the silence feels earned. Not like a punishment. Not like something you were forced into, but like a reward. Like a quiet so deep it settles in your bones and says, this is where you begin again. There's no noise anymore. No guilt. No second guessing. No trying to explain yourself to people, committed to misunderstanding you. The phone stays on, do not disturb more often than not. The house holds space, not tension. And your life finally is yours, alone. You still work hard. You still show up. But it's different now. You don't rush to prove. You don't race to please. You don't measure your worth by how quickly you respond or how easily you bend. You sit straighter. You speak softer. And people listen harder. Sometimes when you walk into your office and the team rises to greet you, someone still says it, Madam CEO. And you nod, not because you need the title, but because you remember the day it first left someone else's lips, casually, naturally, like it had always belonged to you. And maybe it had. You just had to become the kind of woman who believed it. So if you're lying here tonight somewhere between reflection and sleep, wondering whether your silence has been noticed, know that it has.
Not by those who cut you off,
but by the part of you that waited so long to breathe. Let yourself have this peace. Let yourself belong to no one but yourself.
And if you're still awake, that's okay too. Some nights just lying still and breathing softly is enough to return home to yourself.